everybody. In today's video, I'm going to talk about some of the worst parts about living in a car. So a lot of you guys know that I've lived in this little car on and off for 9 years, and I am right now in a little bit of a series talking about the best and the worst parts of living in a car. So I've already done 2 videos of some of the best parts, and this is going to be the second video of some of the worst parts. And I just want to let you guys know now, I do not talk about the negative or worst parts of living in a car. I do not talk about these things to complain, and I don't talk about these things to deter you or scare you whatsoever at all. It's just any choice that we make in life, any lifestyle that we have is going to have good parts and bad parts, pros and cons. And I just always want to be honest with you guys and give you guys as much of a realistic picture as possible, you know, about my life in general, but also about living in a car. And so again, I do not want to share these to deter you or to make you freak out if you're about to go live in a car, but just so you can kind of prepare a little bit mentally and or physically, just prepare a little bit and have like a realistic overview of what it's like to live in a car. And so if you are interested in learning more about this topic, I hope that you're subscribed and I hope that you keep watching. Okay, so I have this list on my phone. Let me get it. And the air's on. It's very warm out today. The air is on. I hope it's not too loud. I apologize if it is. Okay, number 1 on this list of some more things that aren't great about living in a car is that people, whether they're strangers, people that you just meet, or people that you know, people in your family, your friends, some people are going to talk down to you. Some people are going to make fun of you. Some people are going to assume that what you're doing is wrong, stupid, lazy, ridiculous, scary, dangerous, whatever. Some people are going to have negative reactions and negative opinions about your choice to live in a car. Whether you're living in a car to save money, whether you were forced to because you were in a really bad situation somewhere else, whether you're doing it for a fun adventure, whether you're doing it to travel, whatever the reason is, some people are going to talk down to you about it. Some people are going to make fun of you. Some people are going to tell you that you're doing something wrong. And so living in a car, or really doing any alternative lifestyle, some of these things also have to do with like just having an alternative lifestyle or making an abnormal decision for yourself in general. Some of these things are going to pertain to that too. But if you're making any kind of alternative lifestyle change, people are going to make fun of it. And generally the people who make fun of it are people who feel either stuck in their own life or people who kind of feel forced to be in their life. And they might not be really self-aware enough to realize that a lot of things in life are our choice. Not everything, but a lot of things are. And so it's just one of those things that I'm counting it as a negative for living in a car because you're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to kind of deal a little bit more with people making fun of you, talking down to you. But it's just a way that you can kind of, you know, be confident in yourself, in your own decisions, and stick up for yourself, obviously. So yeah, it might get a little hard sometimes, maybe even honestly annoying sometimes, that there are just gonna be a lot of people who talk down about it. Not everyone, you know, most of the people in my life don't really talk negatively about it, but it is just going to happen sometimes. And so it's just gonna be something that it's just good to know that's gonna happen sometimes so you can kind of mentally prepare. All right, my battery's about to die. Hold on one second. Okay, I hope that this battery is fully charged. I'm not 100%, but okay, we're back. Number 2 on this list is that you're gonna have very little privacy. When you're living in a car, you obviously are out in public more often. You're just gonna have a lot less privacy than you might in a house. If you tint your windows, that can be something that's helpful during the day. And obviously at night, I cover my windows when I sleep, so that helps with privacy at night. But during the day, just doing, you know, some day-to-day stuff, whether you're hanging out in your car, doing a hobby or doing some work, or whether you're tweezing your eyebrows, or you're doing something outside, like you're just gonna be in public more often. So especially if you're an introvert, that might be a little hard to get used to or to deal with, but it's also just gonna be a really drastic change versus just having a house. You're just gonna have a little bit less privacy. And while there's obviously private places that you can go for certain things, you know, like restrooms and the gym and stuff like that, there is just gonna be less privacy day to day. So it's just something to get used to. So next on this list is that you might miss some of the creature comforts of living in a house. So I wrote down like having a kitchen to cook in, a bed to sleep in, a couch to watch TV on, a place for people to visit, or even the idea of knowing you're gonna sleep every night. You are probably going to miss those things sometimes. Are you gonna miss them so much that you hate living in a car and that means that you have to move back into a house? No. I think that there's a common misconception of that if we miss something, that means that we must hate what we're doing now. And that's just not true. You know, like I could be in San Diego and miss Montana, but that does not mean that I hate San Diego. I could just love both. I could love both equally. But if I'm only doing one, I could still miss the other one. And then right when I get to Montana, I could miss San Diego. You know what I mean? And so when I'm living in a house, I could miss living in a car. But when I'm living in a car, sometimes I do miss living in a house. It does not mean that one is better than the other. It does not mean that you need to be doing the thing that you miss. It does not mean that. Think of if you miss an ex, does that mean that you should get back with him? No. It might mean that it could happen in the future, but just the emotion does not mean that you have to do the action. It just means that you're having an emotion. Emotions do not have to dictate your actions. They can, but we should think about them first. We should think if it's logical. We should think if it's healthy, you know? So that's a little mindset thing. Emotions do not have to dictate our actions, but they can, depending on the situation, depending on how logical it is, depending on other factors like that. But I'm just saying that there are gonna be some times that you miss having an air fryer that you can make chicken fingers in. There are gonna be some times that you miss having a place that you can have friends over, or that you miss having a bed. Or that you just, sometimes I really just miss sitting on a couch or sitting on a bed and just like scrolling through channels or scrolling through Netflix, watching TV. I can do that in my car. I do that in my car all the time. But sometimes I just miss having the space of a house. It doesn't mean that I hate living in my car. It doesn't mean that I need a bigger car. It doesn't mean that I'm never gonna live in my car again. It doesn't mean any of those things. All it means is that sometimes I miss those things and sometimes you might miss those things. I just think there's such a common misconception that if you miss something, that it means that you hate what you're doing now. And that's just psychologically not true remotely. And so if you're one of those people who kind of thinks that, please get that out of your head, because it's just not true. You know, it could be summer and you miss the snow, but that doesn't mean that you automatically hate the summer. It can mean that, but it doesn't automatically mean that. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, you can miss something without having to act on it. You can miss something without hating what you're doing now, and you can miss something without having to even change anything that you're doing now. It's just an emotion. We feel emotions all the time, and it's okay to feel them, but it's our choice if we act on them or not. You know, all I was saying here is that sometimes I do miss having a kitchen or having a bed. Sometimes it's just gonna happen. And it's just sometimes it might weigh you down a little bit or get you down for a little bit, you know. But if you remind yourself like why you're living in a car, and even just remind yourself of some of the good about living in a car, which I have videos on that too, it can kind of help with that feeling. I think personally, these are all just my opinions, by the way. I think personally, it's easier to feel lonelier when you're living in a car, whether you're on the road or not. Not only because if you're living in a car by yourself and if you're traveling or whatever, not only that, if you're doing that alone, not only just are you alone more often, and so you might just feel lonely because you're alone more often. You know, like most of the time I travel, I'm by myself. And so it's just easier to feel lonely when you're by yourself, obviously. Hopefully with that, you know, if we pray more and connect with God more, hopefully that can help with the loneliness. But I just do think it's easier to feel lonely when you're traveling alone, living in a car alone, stuff like that. But also, I think there's an extra like psychological level of if you are doing something that is so outside the norm, I think it's easier to kind of feel alone through that. You know, and that could again be any kind of alternative lifestyle or abnormal choice in your life, you know? So even if you decide to write a book and everyone else around you has a very typical 9 to 5, which I'm not saying is wrong, that's not what I'm saying, but if everyone around you has a very typical 9 to 5 and then they come home and they just kind of watch TV and they relax, and you are like, I want to write a book and I want to build a brand around this book. And if nobody else around you is doing anything creative or anything entrepreneurial, you just might feel a little more alone in it. You know, and so that's why it is good if you can to make friends who are doing something similar to what you're doing. It can help with that type of loneliness. But I just want, again, to not scare you, but just to prepare you a little bit that if you're doing something so outside the norm, and I'm only putting norm in quotes because normal does not mean bad, but it does not mean good either. It doesn't really mean anything. It just means that it's typical. It just means that a lot of people are doing it. You know, so doing something outside the norm also does not mean that it's good or bad. It just means that there are fewer people doing it, you know, but I just have noticed with living on the road, living in my car, traveling mostly by myself, but then also, you know, doing YouTube and having even a little bit of a more abnormal job, sometimes I have felt really lonely in it, that, you know, I might be trying to talk to a friend about something that I'm going through with, you know, building my business or something like that, but I'm talking to someone who's never built a business before, and so there's just a little bit of a disconnect. Can they still listen and be there for you? Yeah, for sure, 100%. But it can just be good to have a couple friends or just people that you can talk to every once in a while who are doing something similar that you're doing, and that might help with some of that loneliness feeling. But obviously, if you have good friends and good family, they'll support you no matter what, and they'll be on your side. They'll listen to you no matter what. But it's just a little bit different when you can meet people who are going through something similar. It can help with that loneliness. But I just think that it's something that could happen more often when you're living in a car or doing anything that's different than the norm. Okay, next is that dating and making friends is just going to be a little bit, I don't even want to say harder, but it's just going to be very different when you're living in a car, especially if you're traveling, especially if you're on a road trip. And dating, you know, I mean, especially if you're traveling, a lot of your relationship might be long distance, in the beginning at least. If you're just traveling by yourself, I think long distance relationships can absolutely work, and I think that long distance friendships can absolutely work. I have had both. They just take a different type of focus and a different type of like working on it. And so that's just something, again, to just prepare for a little bit. And then if you're already in a relationship but you're about to move into your car, or you're about to go on a solo road trip, or you're about to go live in your car but you just kind of hope that you can still make friends, it's something that's definitely possible. So I don't want you to think that it's not possible. It definitely is. It's just going to be a little bit different, especially if you're traveling. If you're staying in one spot, it's still going to be different because you're going to be living in a car, and who you're dating might live in a car, but they might live in a house. And so it's just when you're finding the right type of people to be around, it's going to be people who accept your lifestyle, who either appreciate it or think it's cool, or at least who are neutral about it. And especially if you're traveling, meeting people who are willing to put in the work of having something that's more long distance. So whether that's, you know, sending each other gifts every once in a while, or FaceTiming, or talking on the phone, or just knowing that you'll try to see them as often as possible, you know? And so it's just, again, a little bit of a different type of thing that's just going to take a different type of work if you're living in a car, especially on the road. Okay, another thing that can be annoying or difficult about living in a car is sometimes finding a place to sleep can be a little difficult. Sometimes. You guys know that I generally sleep at truck stops, rest areas, welcome centers, places like that. Sometimes truck stops are either really, really small and they don't really actually have a large enough parking lot that people would really sleep in, or some of them even have like half-hour parking only or 2-hour parking only signs. And those generally, I like obey those signs, you know, to be respectful of the establishment. I generally obey those signs. There have been times though that I didn't see the signs and I've still slept in those parking lots and it was totally fine. But if you see those signs, you might want to find another place to sleep. Or if you get to a truck stop and you realize that there's only 10 parking spaces, you might want to find another place to sleep. And there have been definitely a few times over the years that has happened, that I got to a place that I thought I could sleep at and then I realized I couldn't, and I had to go find another place. And sometimes, depending on your mood, sometimes that can get a little stressful, a little overwhelming. But in my experience, at least, I've always ended up finding a place. Sometimes is it a place that is a little like, you know, maybe a second, third, fourth choice. Yeah. A lot of times it's not. A lot of times my first choice, and it's easy to find a place, but sometimes it is going to be difficult to find a place. And again, that's just something to prepare yourself for, that is probably going to happen sometimes. It's going to be a little bit difficult, take you a little bit more time, or you might get to a place that you think is great, but then, you know, there's a car near you that has music blasting, or that's really, really loud, or that you just kind of don't feel safe at for some other reason and you want to go leave and find another place. That might happen sometimes. It does not happen often. It definitely doesn't, but it does happen sometimes. So it's something to just, again, mentally prepare for that, but then also physically prepare, you know? So if you're going to a new place, maybe you can come up with a list during the day of 2 or 3 options where you might be able to sleep that night, just in case the first one does not work out, if you want to plan like that. I don't always do that. Sometimes I'll see, oh, okay, I have 2 options. That's cool. But most of the time I just go to option 1, and then if that doesn't work out for some reason, which again is not very common, but it does happen sometimes, if the first place does not work out, then I'll just go to either my Flying J and Pilot app or my Loves app, or I'll just go to my map on my phone and just search what else is around. Anyway, all right, I think that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video of just some of the things that are harder about living in a car, a couple practical things and a couple more mindset related things, you know. And sometimes when your mindset is so different than other people, it's just a little bit harder. because you're kind of having to deal with certain things alone, you know? And so it's just a little bit harder, but it's definitely possible. Just because something's hard does not mean that it's not possible. And a lot of things that are worth it in life are going to be a little bit difficult. And so I hope this video helped you, whether you are thinking of living in your car or sleeping in a car, or whether you're just curious about car life. I hope this video helped you, you know, just have a more overall view of my opinions of it. And I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you're subscribed and following me on Instagram as well. And yeah, I guess that's gonna be it. Thank you again for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. I love you, Jesus loves you, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.